Have you ever wondered what secrets lurk in the darkness beneath the city? What mysterious discovery could make even the bravest tremble? And who or what might be waiting for you in the shadows of the new Catacomb? Classic Storytime Hub presents The New Catacomb by Arthur Conan Doyle, reimagined in English. Dive into this reimagined classic and uncover the chilling truths hidden below.
Burger, Kennedy said, leaning forward, I really wish you'd share this with me. The two renowned students of Roman antiquities sat in Kennedy's elegant study, the room perched above the bustling Corso. Outside, the city of Rome stretched under a crisp winter sky, stars glinting above the endless chain of electric lamps, the glow of lively cafes, and the hurried clatter of carriages along crowded streets. But inside, in the quiet of Kennedy's chamber, time seemed to bend backward. The air smelled faintly of dust and history, a mix of old stone and leather-bound books. Cracked friezes lined the walls, bearing witness to centuries long gone, and weathered busts of stern senators and hardened soldiers glared from shadowed corners, their carved eyes almost alive in the flickering light. On the central table, a meticulously detailed reconstruction of the baths of Caracalla dominated the scene, a creation that had awed scholars when it traveled to Berlin. Suspended amphoras swung gently from the ceiling, and the rich red carpet was littered with rare curiosities, fragments of inscriptions, ornate relics, and mysterious trinkets, all verified, all priceless. Kennedy, though barely over 30, had already carved out a European reputation for himself. His wealth had given him access to treasures most scholars only dreamed of, but it was his sharp, relentless mind that transformed opportunity into acclaim. Yet there was a paradox in him. A man capable of deep, relentless focus, yet easily swayed by whim and indulgence. His striking features betrayed the tension within. A high, brilliant forehead suggesting intellect, a firm nose hinting at drive, and a mouth that curved with both sensuality and mischief. Strength and vulnerability, rigor and indulgence, they coexisted in him, just as the room held the restless past alongside the vibrant present. Julius Burger was a study in contrasts. Born of a German father and an Italian mother, he carried the robust, unwavering strength of the North, tempered by the subtle elegance of the South. His piercing blue eyes shone against a sun-warmed complexion, and a broad, commanding forehead framed by tight golden curls gave him an almost sculpted presence. His jaw was strong and clean-shaven, reminiscent of the stern Roman busts that watched silently from the shadowed corners of Kennedy's study. But beneath that rugged exterior lay hints of cunning and sophistication, inherited from his Italian lineage. Still, his smile was honest, his gaze open, and one could see immediately that these ancestral traces had little to do with who he truly was. Burger's life had been a far tougher journey than Kennedy's. 12 years earlier, he had arrived in Rome as a penniless student, surviving on a modest research grant from the University of Bonn. Slowly, painstakingly, and with relentless determination, he climbed the ladder of scholarly fame. Today, he was a respected member of the Berlin Academy, and whispers suggested the chair of one of Germany's greatest universities awaited him. But the single-minded drive that had carried him so far left little room for anything else. Social graces, idle chatter, leisure, all were foreign to him. Only when immersed in his work did his face come alive, every feature animated with thought and passion. Outside his work, he was often quiet, uneasy in the presence of casual conversation, painfully aware of his limitations in areas beyond his expertise, and restless at the trivial small talk that others used to fill the empty spaces of their minds. For years, a quiet bond had been forming between these two strikingly different rivals. What began as mere professional recognition, the shared respect for each other's depth of knowledge and unbridled enthusiasm for Roman antiquities, was slowly blossoming into something resembling friendship. In a room full of young scholars, each found in the other the rare mind that could truly appreciate their work. Gradually, personal fascination crept in. Kennedy, with his magnetic charm and lively presence, amused Berger with his wit and social brilliance, while Berger, with his steadfast honesty and quiet strength, intrigued Kennedy. Yet, at that very moment, Kennedy was not entirely free of controversy. Whispers of a love affair, its details murky, its outcome ambiguous, had painted him, in the eyes of some, as callous and self-serving. But in the circles of bachelor students and artists where he thrived, such things sparked curiosity rather than outrage, and perhaps even a touch of envy. "Look here, Berger," Kennedy said, fixing his gaze on the serene, untroubled face of his companion. "I really wish you'd confide in me." His hand gestured toward the rug on the floor, where a long, shallow wicker basket from the Campagna rested. Inside it lay a chaotic jumble of objects, inscribed tiles, shattered mosaics, fragmented papyri, rusted metal ornaments, items that to any outsider might appear as little more than discarded debris. Yet to those who knew, these were treasures, unique, irreplaceable fragments of history, pieces that could illuminate the development of entire civilizations. It was Berger who had gathered this collection, and Kennedy's eyes gleamed with anticipation as he studied it, each artifact a puzzle piece in the grand tapestry of the past. "I won't touch your treasure trove," Kennedy said, leaning back in his chair, "but I'd love to hear the story behind it." Berger, deliberate as ever, lit a cigar, the orange tip glowing in the dim light. "It's a discovery of the first order," Kennedy continued, his eyes scanning the scattered relics. "These inscriptions alone will send ripples through every museum and academy in Europe." "For every piece here," Berger replied, exhaling smoke, "there are 1,000,000 more out there. A dozen scholars could spend a lifetime studying them and still build a reputation as solid as the castle of Sant'Angelo." Kennedy leaned forward, fingers tracing the curve of his long, fair mustache, his forehead creasing in thought. "You've given yourself away, Berger," he said, finally. "The only thing your words could mean. You've found a new catacomb." Berger's lips curved into a knowing smile. "I suspected you'd draw that conclusion just by examining these fragments. Certainly, the artifacts suggested it, but your last remarks, they make it undeniable. Only a catacomb could hold so vast a collection of relics." "Exactly. No mystery there. I have discovered a new catacomb." "Where?"
"That," Berger said, a spark of mischief in his eyes, "is my secret, my dear Kennedy. Rest assured it's hidden so well that the chance of anyone else stumbling upon it is 1 in 1,000,000. Its date is unlike any known catacomb, and it was reserved for the burial of the highest-ranking Christians. The remains and relics are unlike anything seen before." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Were it not for my knowledge of your skill and determination, I might have confided everything to you under the strictest secrecy. But as it stands, I must first prepare my own report before risking such formidable competition." Kennedy's passion for his field was almost obsessive, a devotion that kept him anchored amidst the distractions of a wealthy, pleasure-seeking life. Ambition existed in him, yes, but it was secondary to the pure, unbridled joy he took in uncovering the secrets of ancient Rome. The thought of this newly discovered underworld sent a thrill through him. "Look here, Berger," he said, his voice earnest, eyes locked on his companion. "You can trust me completely. I swear, nothing I see will reach paper or press without your express permission. I understand your caution, it's natural, but truly you have nothing to fear from me.
On the other hand, if you choose to remain silent, I will investigate, and should I stumble upon it myself, well, I would then be under no obligation to withhold my findings." Berger leaned back, smiling thoughtfully, cigar smoke curling around his face. "I've noticed something, friend Kennedy, that when I seek knowledge from you, you're not always so forthcoming." "When have I ever refused to tell you what I knew?" Kennedy countered, raising an eyebrow. "Remember the materials I supplied for your paper on the Temple of the Vestals?" "Ah, yes," Berger replied with a faint smile, "but that was trivial. Suppose I were to ask something more personal, something of real significance. This newly discovered underworld is deeply intimate to me. I would expect some sign of trust in return." Kennedy leaned forward, intrigued. "I don't quite follow, but if you mean that you'll answer my questions about the Catacomb only if I answer yours, I give you my word, Berger. Anything you ask, I will answer." "Well then," said Berger, sinking luxuriously into his settee, a curling plume of blue cigar smoke drifting into the air, "tell me everything about your affair with Miss Mary Saunderson." Kennedy shot upright, eyes blazing at his calm, unflappable companion. "What on earth do you mean?" he exclaimed. "What kind of question is that? You may think it a joke, but it's a dreadful one." Berger shook his head slowly, the faintest trace of a smile on his lips. "I assure you, it's no joke. I'm genuinely curious. I know little of society, of women, of the tangled ways of the world. Such an incident has the allure of the unknown for me. I know you, and I had seen her in passing. I've even spoken with her once or twice. I'd like to hear from you, in your own words, what really happened." "I won't tell you a word," Kennedy snapped.
"Perfectly fair," Berger said, rising and gathering his basket of treasures. "It was merely a whim, to see if you'd relinquish a secret as easily as you expect me to withhold mine about the new catacomb. You didn't, and I never imagined you would. But why should I be any different? St. John's clock is striking 10. It's time I took my leave." "No, wait a moment, Berger," Kennedy said, leaning forward. "This obsession of yours over a long-dead romance is ridiculous. You know the world despises a man who kisses and tells." "Indeed," Berger replied, tucking his basket under his arm. "When a man exposes secrets about a woman previously unknown, he is rightly branded a villain. But in this case, as you must know, it was public gossip, the talk of Rome, so no harm comes to Miss Mary Saunderson if we discuss it. Yet I respect your scruples. Good night, then." "Wait a moment, Berger," Kennedy said, laying a hand on his companion's arm. "I'm very keen on this catacomb business. I can't just let it drop. Could you perhaps ask me something else in return? Something not quite so eccentric this time?" Berger shook his head, basket still in hand. No, you've refused, and that ends it," he said calmly. "No doubt you are right not to answer, and no doubt I am right as well. So again, my dear Kennedy, good night." Kennedy watched him cross the room, hand on the door handle, before his host sprang forward with the air of a man determined to make the best of what could not be helped. "Hold on, old fellow," he said, voice tinged with amusement. "I think you're behaving ridiculously, but if this is the condition, I suppose I must submit. I hate speaking of a girl, yet, as you said, the story is public in Rome, and I doubt I can tell you anything you don't already know. So, what exactly did you want to know?" Berger returned to the stove, setting down his basket, and sank into his chair with a relaxed sigh. "May I have another cigar?" "Thank you. I never smoke while working, but a conversation like this is far more enjoyable under the influence of tobacco. Now, about this young lady, your little adventure with her, what has become of her?" "She's at home with her family." "In England, really?" "Yes." "And where in England? London?" "No, Twickenham."
Excuse my curiosity, my dear Kennedy. You must chalk it up to my ignorance of the world. I suppose it's quite simple to persuade a young lady to spend 3 weeks in your company and then safely return her to her family in, what did you say? Twickenham, Kennedy confirmed, a hint of a smile on his lips.
Quite so, Twickenham, Berger said, leaning back. But it's so completely outside my experience that I can hardly imagine how you went about it. If you truly loved this girl, your feelings couldn't have vanished in 3 weeks. So I take it you never really loved her. But if you didn't, why create such a scandal, one that has harmed both you and her? Kennedy stared moodily into the glowing red of the stove, his fingers tracing idle patterns in the warm air. That's a logical way to look at it, he admitted. Love is a large word. It covers many shades of feeling. I liked her, yes, and as you've seen, she could be quite enchanting. But looking back, I must confess, I never truly loved her. Then, my dear Kennedy, why did you do it? The thrill of the adventure, he said, a faint spark lighting his eyes. The adventure? You, of all people, are so fond of adventure? Where would the variety of life be without it? I pursued her for the chase itself. There's no pursuit like that of a charming woman. It was difficult, piquant even. She was the companion of Lady Emily Rood, so moments alone with her were rare. And if that weren't enough, she revealed early on that she was already engaged. Mein Gott! To whom? She mentioned no names. I don't suppose anyone knew. So the obstacles made it even more thrilling? It certainly added spice, don't you think? Kennedy replied, a mischievous curl at the corner of his mouth. I tell you I'm utterly ignorant about such matters, Berger said, shaking his head. My dear fellow, Kennedy said, leaning back, remember the apple you stole from a neighbor's tree. It always tasted sweeter than the one that fell from your own tree. And then I discovered she cared for me. What, immediately? Oh no, Kennedy said quietly. It took nearly 3 months of careful effort, slow advances, cautious words, but in the end I won her over. She understood that my legal separation made it impossible for me to do the honorable thing. Still, she came, and for a time it was wonderful, while it lasted. And the other man? Berger asked. Kennedy lifted one shoulder in a faint shrug. Survival of the fittest, I suppose. If he'd been the better man, she wouldn't have left him. Let's drop it. I've had enough of this subject. Berger hesitated, then added, just one last question. How did it end so quickly? 3 weeks? I sighed. We cooled, both of us. She refused absolutely to return to Rome and face the people she'd known. But Rome is essential to me. I was already longing to return to my work. That alone made separation inevitable. Then her father appeared at the hotel in London. There was a scene. Awkward. Painful. After that, everything turned sour. Strange thing is, I missed her terribly at first, but in the end, I was relieved to be free of it. He looked sharply at Berger. You won't repeat any of this. My dear Kennedy, Berger said gently, I wouldn't dream of it, but I find your account fascinating, not for gossip's sake, but because it reveals how differently you see the world. I've lived so little of life myself. He paused, then smiled faintly. And now you wish to hear about my new catacomb. There's no point in trying to describe it. Words would fail you, and you'd never find it that way. Kennedy leaned forward, eyes alight. There's only one solution, Berger continued. I must take you there. Kennedy's face broke into a grin. That would be magnificent. When would you like to go? As soon as possible, Kennedy replied without hesitation. I can hardly contain my impatience. Well, it's a beautiful night, Berger said, pulling his coat tighter against the cold, though a touch brisk. Suppose we set out in an hour. We must be careful. If anyone saw us moving in pairs, they'd suspect something unusual." "Caution is essential," Kennedy agreed. "Is it far?" "A few miles," Berger replied. "Not too far to walk." "Not at all. We can manage on foot." "Then that's best. A cabman might get suspicious if he dropped us somewhere lonely in the dead of night." "Exactly. Let's meet at the gate of the Appian Way at midnight. I need to return to my lodgings for matches, candles, and a few other things." "All right, Berger. It's very generous of you to let me in on this secret. I promise nothing I see will reach pen or paper until your report is published. Goodbye for now. I'll meet you at the gate at 12. The cold, clear air carried the musical chimes from Rome's countless clocks as Berger, wrapped in a heavy Italian overcoat, lantern swinging from his hand, made his way to the rendezvous. Kennedy stepped silently out of the shadows to meet him. "You are ardent in work as in love," the German laughed. "Yes," Kennedy replied, breath clouding in the night air. "I've been waiting here nearly half an hour." "I trust you left no clue as to our destination." "Not a single one. By Jove, I'm chilled to the bone. Come on, Berger, let's warm ourselves with a brisk walk." Their boots clattered sharply against the uneven stone paving of what remained of the Appian Way, once the most celebrated highway in the world. A lone peasant heading home from a wine shop and a few carts laden with country produce were the only signs of life they encountered. The city lay hushed around them, the night alive with the distant echoes of bells and the whisper of ancient stones beneath their feet. They strode onward, the massive tombs looming like silent sentinels on either side, shadows stretching long across the moonlit Campagna. Ahead, the catacombs of St. Callistus marked their approach, and against the rising moon, the circular bastion of Caecilia Metella rose like a ghostly sentinel. Berger paused, hand resting on his side, a wry smile on his face. "Your legs are longer than mine, and you are more accustomed to walking. I think the turn-off is somewhere here. Yes, around the corner of the trattoria. The path is narrow, so I'll go first, and you can follow." He lit the lantern, casting a flickering circle of light that revealed a winding, treacherous track cutting across the marshy fields. The great aqueducts of ancient Rome stretched overhead, monstrous stone worms frozen in moonlight. They passed under one of its massive arches and skirted the circular ruins of a forgotten arena. Finally, Berger stopped before a solitary, weathered cowhouse. From his pocket, he drew a small key. "Surely your catacomb isn't inside a house," Kennedy exclaimed. "The entrance is," Berger said calmly. "That's our safeguard, keeps everyone else out. And the proprietor? He knows nothing. He'd uncovered a few fragments, which made me certain the house concealed something. I rented it and carried out the excavations myself. Come in and close the door behind you." Inside, the long, empty building smelled faintly of hay. Along one wall, the mangers for the cows lay abandoned. Berger set the lantern on the floor and draped his overcoat over it, shielding the light in all directions but one. "A stray lantern here might excite attention," he murmured. "Now, help me move this boarding." The corner of the floor gave way easily. Plank by plank, they lifted it and leaned it against the wall. Beneath, a square aperture yawned, revealing a staircase of worn stone descending into the cold, hidden bowels of the earth. "Be careful," Berger called, as Kennedy, driven by impatience, hurried down the stone steps. "It's a perfect rabbit warren below. Lose your way here, and the chances of ever coming out are 100 to 1. Wait until I bring the light." "How do you find your own way if it's so tangled?" Kennedy asked. Berger shrugged, a faint smile in the lantern's glow. "I had some narrow escapes at first. Over time I learned the paths. There's a system, but one a stranger in darkness could never discern. Even now, whenever I venture deep, I unroll a ball of string behind me. You'll see, it's tricky. Each passage splits and subdivides a dozen times in less than 100 yards. They had descended 20 feet from the byre and now stood in a square chamber carved from the soft tufa. The lantern cast a flickering glow, bright below, dim above, over cracked brown walls. All around them were black openings, passageways radiating from the center like the spokes of an ancient wheel. "Follow me closely, my friend," Berger instructed. "Do not linger to inspect anything along the way. What I will show you contains everything, more than anything you'll see here. Directly is best. It will save time." He led the way down one corridor, Kennedy close behind. Occasionally the passage split in two, but Berger ignored the forks, moving as if guided by secret marks known only to him. Everywhere along the walls, the mummified Christians of old Rome lay packed side by side, like berths on an emigrant's ship. The yellow light of the lantern flickered across shriveled faces, rounded skulls and long white arm bones crossed over fleshless chests. Kennedy's eyes roamed with reverent curiosity, taking in inscriptions, funeral vessels, painted images, vestments and ritual utensils, all placed carefully centuries ago by pious hands. Even in fleeting glances as they hurried past, Kennedy realized the enormity of what he was seeing. This was the earliest and most exquisite of the catacombs, a treasure trove of Roman remains the likes of which no student had ever witnessed in one place.
"What would happen if the light went out?" he asked, his voice echoing slightly in the tight corridors. "I carry a spare candle and a box of matches," Berger replied. "By the way, Kennedy, have you any?" "No," Kennedy admitted. "You'd better give me some." "Oh, it's all right. There's no chance we'll get separated." "How far are we going? It feels like we've walked a quarter of a mile already." "More than that," Berger said, his voice calm in the shadowed passage. "There's no real limit to these tombs, or at least I've never found one. This is a very tricky area, so I think it's time to use our ball of string." He secured one end to a protruding stone, tucking the coil into his coat and letting it unravel as they advanced. Kennedy recognized the wisdom of the precaution immediately. The passages had grown more complex, twisting and intersecting in an almost impossible network. At last, the labyrinth opened into a vast circular hall. At one end stood a square pedestal of tufa, crowned with a slab of marble. "By Jove," Kennedy breathed, his eyes wide as Berger swung the lantern across the surface. "It's a Christian altar, probably the first ever. See the tiny consecration cross carved into the corner? This circular space must have been used as a church." "Exactly," Berger said, his tone reverent. "If I had more time, I'd show you every body in the niches along the walls. They are the early popes and bishops, complete with their mitres, croziers, and full canonicals. Go over to that one. Look closely." Kennedy stepped forward, his heart pounding with awe and a chill that ran down his spine. He gazed at the ghastly head resting loosely on a shredded, decaying mitre, the centuries seeming to hang suspended in that solemn, sacred silence. "This is extraordinary," Kennedy said, his voice echoing against the curved vault, vibrating in the still air. "From everything I've seen, it's unique. Bring the lantern over, Berger. I want to see them all." But Berger had already wandered to the far side of the hall, standing within a yellow halo of lantern light. "Do you realize how many wrong turnings lie between here and the stairs? Over 2,000. No doubt the Christians used it as a safeguard. Even with a light, the odds of finding the exit are 2,000 to 1. In darkness, it's virtually impossible." "Indeed," Kennedy murmured, shivering slightly at the thought. "And the darkness itself, dreadful," Berger continued. "I tested it once for curiosity. Let's do it again." He bent to the lantern, and in an instant the light was gone. Darkness slammed into Kennedy like a solid wall, as if invisible hands had clamped over his eyes. He had never known such oppressive blackness. It pressed, heavy and suffocating, forcing him to shrink back instinctively. His hands groped ahead, desperate to push it away. "That's enough, Berger. Bring back the light," he called, his voice tense. But Berger's laughter rang out, startlingly clear, yet seeming to come from every direction at once in the circular room. "You seem uneasy, friend Kennedy," Berger teased. "Go on, man. Light the candle," Kennedy snapped impatiently. "It's peculiar," Berger said, amusement in his voice. "I could not, by sound alone, tell where you were standing. Could you tell my position?" "No," Kennedy admitted. "You seem to be everywhere at once." "If it weren't for this string I hold, I'd have no idea which way to go." "I dare say not," Kennedy muttered. "Strike a light, man. Enough of this nonsense." "Well, Kennedy," Berger's voice echoed eerily through the black corridors, "there are two things I know you love. One, an adventure. The other, a challenge. Your adventure tonight will be finding your way out of this catacomb. Your challenge, the darkness and the 2,000 wrong turns that make every step a test. But take your time. Pause for a moment now and then, and I want you to think of Miss Mary Saunderson and whether you were quite fair to her." "You devil! What do you mean?" Kennedy roared, spinning in tight circles, his hands clutching at the solid blackness around him. "Goodbye," came the mocking reply, drifting farther into the shadows. "Even by your own account, Kennedy, you did not act rightly with that girl. One little thing you did not know, Miss Saunderson was engaged to a poor, ungainly student, and his name was Julius Berger." A faint rustle, the soft strike of a foot against stone, and then silence. Absolute oppressive silence, closing in on Kennedy like water around a drowning man. The old catacomb seemed to swallow him whole, the centuries pressing down in suffocating quiet. Some 2 months later, the European press carried a report that would make waves among scholars and adventurers alike. One of the most remarkable discoveries of recent years is the new catacomb in Rome, located east of the well-known vaults of St. Calixtus. This extraordinary burial place, rich with early Christian relics, is credited to the energy and insight of Dr. Julius Berger, the young German specialist who is rapidly establishing himself as a leading authority on ancient Rome. Though Dr. Berger was first to publish his findings, it appears that a less fortunate adventurer had once anticipated the discovery. Some months ago, Mr. Kennedy, the well-known English student, suddenly disappeared from his rooms on the Corso. Rumors circulated that his departure was tied to a recent scandal, sending shockwaves through the scholarly and social circles of Rome. The catacomb remained, silent and hidden, a labyrinth of history and secrets, while those who dared enter it carried with them both awe and a whisper of dread. It soon became clear that Kennedy had fallen victim to his unrelenting passion for archaeology, the very obsession that had propelled him to the forefront of scholarly circles. His body was discovered deep within the heart of the new catacomb. From the condition of his feet and boots, it was evident that he had wandered for days, lost in the maze-like corridors that make these underground tombs so perilous for explorers. In a tragic and inexplicable display of recklessness, he had ventured into this labyrinth without candles or matches, an oversight that led inevitably to his grim fate. What made this tragedy even more heartrending was that Dr. Julius Berger, the brilliant scholar credited with the discovery, was not only the first to document the catacomb, but also a close personal friend of the deceased. The joy of his extraordinary find has been forever overshadowed by the tragic loss of his comrade, an event that will haunt him for the rest of his life.
And thus the story ended. If you liked this journey into the worlds of classic literature, do not forget to support us by subscribing so we can tell you more. And hey, if there's a classic tale you'd love to hear told in this suspenseful style, drop its name in the comments below. Your suggestion might be our next chilling adventure.